Welcome to episode 20 of Take Your Points. My name is Ronan Scott, and this week's guests are Carvill, our GAA columnist, and Fermangh footballer Tomas Corrigan. It's been a dramatic week in the GAA. We can't avoid it, but I wanted to start by speaking to Tomas about his return to Fermangh football. Tomas, you were away for a year. You took a year out from county football. What was the thinking there? What was your reasons for?
Suppose I was fed up with football. I was just fed up in general. I was based in Dublin, and I had been travelling up and down the road for 8 years, I think. So I was just kind of ran out of steam. I was exhausted, and I just felt I needed a break from football, from work, from everything. So I booked a one-way ticket to Mexico City and spent a year travelling through Latin America and learning Spanish and just taking a break from it all.
The only place more dangerous than Fermangh?
Yeah.
Why Mexico City?
Well, so I had always wanted to learn Spanish, so and I'd always wanted to go travelling as well. So I thought Mexico City is far enough away from the GAA, from everywhere, to just get away from it all. And the plan was to start in Mexico and move, travel down to Argentina. So Mexico City seemed like a good place to start. So it was a great year, great experience, and I learned a lot.
What was there? Was there a reason why was there any reason why you just decided one out of a blue moon, or was there a period leading up to making this decision?
Well, I hadn't been enjoying playing football for a while. Football had become a chore. To get to football training, because I was based in Dublin, involved me having to leave work at 4 o'clock in the middle of the day, and a 3-hour drive to training. So I'd get to training and I'd be quite tired from nearly a full day's work, and then a 3-hour drive, and then having to train, and then back again at night, not getting home till 12 o'clock, and then into work the next day. So that was my routine for a couple of years, from when I started working as a solicitor in Dublin. So I was just exhausted. I ran out of steam. I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't enjoying football. I wasn't enjoying work. I wasn't enjoying the rest of the things you're supposed to enjoy in life. So I just decided I needed a complete break from everything. So I decided that I was going to do things that I'd always wanted to do. So I'd always wanted to learn Spanish, but because of I'd looked at maybe doing courses and things, but when you're playing football, you're always training the nights that these courses are on. So I'd kind of just said, I'd kind of given up that I'd never get the chance to learn a language until maybe I was 40 or something. So then when I decided that, no, I'm going to take a break, I said, I'm going to learn Spanish and going to go away, take myself away from it all, go to a place where no one knows you, you can just totally chill out. And so I ended up in Latin America learning Spanish and taking it easy. What
was the reaction whenever you made the decision? Were people shocked?
I'm not sure if people were shocked. My form had dipped in the year we got to the Ulster final. I was struggling to make the team. The team were doing so well, and I just wasn't performing well at training and wasn't really enjoying the whole sort of experience of being on an inter-county team. So I think people who were close to me probably realised that I needed the break. I'm sure people were shocked that, a county player is taking a break from the game, because it's sort of it's not really the done thing. You're kind of expected to play all the time. But I looked to examples of Jamie Clark. He took a year or two away, and a few other examples. And I just said, no, this is something that I need to do. So was there shock? I think my managers at the time were a bit disappointed maybe to lose a player, but by and large, they understood my decision.
What was the feeling like whenever you hit Mexico City with no football or no work? Was Was it a breath of fresh air, or was it?
No, it was a huge breath of fresh air. It's sort of it's hard to sort of explain, but when you're growing up playing football and you kind of identify as the footballer, Tomas Corrigan, the footballer all the time. You go to Mexico City and no one knows what Gaelic football is, or who you are, what Gaelic football is, or anything. So it's like you're sort of born again. You know, you've kind of left that sort of identity behind, and you can start again from, like, it's a blank canvas. And it was very healthy for sort of my mental health at the time. And you meet loads of people, and you're chatting to people who have no idea who you are or what Gaelic football is, and you just learn. I learned a lot about, you know, myself, about other people, about the world. So yeah.
I imagine it's probably a story that would resonate with a lot of players who, not county players, but club players who just feel like the pressure of having to tog out every weekend for the senior team, and if not, they'll get criticism or be, you know, looked down upon. Like, I imagine they all would share that sort of feeling of pressure.
I think so, yeah. I think for me anyway, I put myself under a lot of pressure. You sort of imagine all these things that people are going to say to you if you say that you need to take a break, and 99% of the time people will understand where you're coming from. So the kind of pressure that people feel all the time, that's sort of a result of your own thoughts. So what I would say to people, lads who do think that, you know, they have to play, no, they don't. Like, no one is. You're not paid to play, and there's so much more to life. I know this is a Gaelic football show, but there's so much more to life than playing football. Do you know? From now that I'm back, I sort of see football in a whole new different light, a much more healthier light. I don't feel that I have to play, but yet I want to play, and that's a totally different mindset. When you feel that you have to do something, it's much harder to enjoy it. But if you feel that if you want to play and you want to be going to training all the time, then life is a whole lot easier, and football is a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, well, I think we've had people on this show before. Paddy Cunningham was on recently, 2 weeks ago, and he said about how he left the game and he still had a yearning to play, but his attitude was if he has to want to play, and he also has to be able to have the time to play. So I think you have to get your priorities right. Players have to understand what they want. Yeah,
and it's getting a balance right between the other aspects in your life. So everyone, you know, you have to make sure that you're able to balance your career, your like work career, but then also equally as important is balancing your sort of relationships you have with your friends, your family, and your girlfriend or wife. The way football is at the minute, it's extremely difficult to get that balance right, and a lot of times the balance is so badly skewed against those other aspects that football takes up everything. So the first point is like when you recognise that, then you can make certain changes. Obviously, you have to make some sacrifices in the other parts of your life, football and relationships. But if you don't have those other two aspects right, then the football suffers. It's kind of like I've heard the Dublin players talk about it, that Jim Gavin refers to it as keeping all the plates spinning, which I thought was a great analogy. You know, the guy, the circus act who has the poles with the plates on it. Like, you need to keep, you know, each one right, or else when one collapses, you know, they all can collapse, and you suffer, you know, from anxiety and even depression.
We're going to move on to talk about, whenever we get Cahal, we're going to talk about the coronavirus and how it's affected the GAA. But how do you feel before we've had this break in the GAA? How did you feel about how you're spinning those plates with returning to football?
So I was in Dublin, and when I came back from my travels, I said that, you know, if I'm going to play football again, there's no point in me being in Dublin and trying to like absolutely killing myself just to even get to training. So I also wanted to be in a city and in a work in a high end law firm, and fast paced. So the best option for me was to move to Belfast. So that has cut my travel time in half, which makes a huge difference to my energy levels when I'm at training. On my rest days, I'm able to do other things. So, because my energy levels are better, I'm enjoying football a lot more. I was, before this whole, before the coronavirus hit, I was really enjoying my football. I got a bit unlucky. I had a bad flu, funnily enough, in over Christmas, and then my first training back, I tweaked my calf, so I missed the whole McKenna Cup and the first stage of the league. But the last couple of training sessions, I felt myself getting back to where I was a couple of years ago, like flying, to be honest. This whole COVID-19 has put a bit of a spanner in the works, but probably hasn't worked out too bad for us, because we were in diffs in Division 2. But yeah.
I think we should get Cahal in now to get a chat about what we think, because there's a lot of issues here going on. There's so much up in the air, but I think we want to discuss about what will happen, what could happen, what should happen, and how really the GAA can help the situation. So Tomas, thanks for sharing your story.
No problem, Ronan.
Carvill has joined us to get into the discussion about the coronavirus and its effect on the GAA, because we're in shutdown now, Cahal. Currently, we don't know when the GAA is supposed to start back up, though they say it's the 29th of March, but we're sort of in basically no man's land. We don't know what's going on.
Well, I don't know if it's no man's land. Certainly, from my point of view, there was no chance come the 29th of March that this will be back and the season will be back up and running. I think in this circumstances, the GAA needs to be commended. I've been very critical sometimes of the GAA in my articles, but they need to be commended in this for taking decisive action. If we look at Boris Johnson's press conference he's just given, he's talking about 12 weeks and see where we get to at that stage. Schools are still open in Northern Ireland, whereas the GAA looked at it last week and said, right, on an all-Ireland basis, we are shutting this down. This is not good for our members. We put the health of our members before everything, be it commercial, be it arranging the big games, etc., moving the league along. The paramount importance is our members, and that came out very clearly. If you look at Michael Ryan, the Irish doctor from the WHO, has come out consistently over the last week and explained the seriousness, having been involved in Ebola outbreaks and SARS, etc. And this is a very serious point in the history of the world and in this country, and the GAA have to be commended for how they have acted, and we need to put the health of our members first. And if that means that the season is put back until 2021, then so be it.
Yeah, because it's sport at the end of the day. Though there was argument that people said that mass gatherings weren't as important. It's more they're talking about taking it in stages, but you think that it was just right just to cut it off?
Well, I think if we look at what's happened in Singapore, in Taiwan, in China, and obviously they have a different system of government in those places, but they've gone through the SARS epidemic. And as William Hanage from the medical school in Harvard, he was talking about that when he saw the reaction of the British government in relation to how they were dealing with it, he thought it was satire. He thought this was a joke. Mass gatherings like Cheltenham was ridiculous, and I think we need, as individuals and as a collective, to be doing our utmost to self-isolate, to stop this in its tracks, because ultimately if we don't do that, the older generation and members of our family and the community are going to pay.
I suppose if it may or may not have an effect whether they stop the GAA matches, but it highlights how serious it is, because whenever people heard that it was happening, they all went to the public. But if mass stops and the GAA stops, then this is serious.
Yeah, well, I think when they're putting a massive closure on the pubs, etc., And they should have done that in the north. And what I fear is that people will just, on the border region where I'm from, where Tomas is from, they'll just go over to the north and not really think about it too much. But ultimately, this is going to cost lives. And when you look at it and bring it back to the bare bones of it, if calling off the league game or calling off Fermangh and Clare or Armagh and Roscommon saves the lives of 2, 3, even one member of the GAA, then is it not worth it?
Yeah. What is the impact for players, though, Tomas? Everybody's on doing their own programs? Is that correct, or what do you work as a team, or have you cut off all contact, or how do you approach it as athletes?
Well, I suppose players, like everyone, it's sort of all up in the air at the minute. Like everyone is sort of walking around not knowing what's going on. We're lucky that our strength and conditioning, or I suppose that all teams have their strength and conditioning programs to keep themselves ticking over, but no one knows if it's going to get back up and running in March. I think that's highly unlikely. You're then looking at maybe June, so that's like 12 weeks away. So, you're going to have to work by yourself for 12 weeks. And the GAA, I went to do some runs at the weekend and kick a few points and try and, bring a wee bit of normality to life. But I went to the Cahal pitch and the gates were locked, because GAA clubs have locked their gates to kind of stop people gathering and, doing training sessions and, people not following the instructions that are given. So it's just there's such a level of disruption that I think it might take a couple of weeks for the kind of panic to settle down. So the panic settles down, but people realise, okay, we all have to take really high, serious precautions, but there is a way to manage, try and keep a wee bit of normality. I think at the minute, the panic that is created by the sort of haphazard information that's been given, especially by the UK government, sort of doesn't really allow you to sort of plan, how you're going to train and things like that. So from my perspective, I just feel there's too much kind of uncertainty at the minute to plan, how you're going to approach the next couple of weeks.
What do you think the approach should be for teams, Cahal? Is it obtuse of us to start talking about games and how you prepare for an All-Ireland Championship when, as you say, people's lives are in danger?
Yeah, well that is right, but the GAA is important, but it's not as important as life and death. But on the point of players training and doing, and it's not just county players, club players as well, should be doing work on their own in certain circumstances, in their own home, going for walks, runs, whatever else. Like we have in our Middletown, we've sent around a programme that we can do. It's all body weight, you don't need to go to the gym, stretching, all of that there. And it's not just about preparing for a championship in football or hurling or women's football, camogie. It's also about protecting yourself if you do get COVID-19. The healthier you are, the better shape you're in, your immune system's going to be better, and that will mean that you'll be able to fight it off better. And a lot of people are talking about the fact that, it's only old people that are impacted upon this. This does and can do long-term damage to your lungs and your breathing apparatus. And just because you're older, you're in the higher percentage risk category. But because you're younger, and if maybe you aren't in great shape or you've just let yourself go for a while, you are also at a higher risk. So training with a club, with a county, everyone should be doing work, whether it's self-isolating or otherwise, and there are means of doing that. So put your health first. Yes, maybe keep an eye on a goal as to, I want to stay in shape if I do get the virus, but also with a view to, I want to get back out on those heady days in Croke Park to play for Fermangh, to play for Armagh, to win something, so you have a purpose and goal, because a lot of this as well is to do with your mental well-being. And just to pick up one of the points that Tomas referred to, this constant stream and constant feed of information about the issue is really damaging people in relation to the panic setting in. They're seeing photos of no bread in shops and they're thinking, I need to go out. And it needs to be taking a step back to only look at the news feed once or twice a day, to only use established sources of information. Like, I'll give you an example. We got a message last night into our group, Middletown footballers, to say, don't be taking painkillers because that actually enhances and encourages the virus to attract you, which is no medical basis at all. There was messages saying that the country was going into lockdown, that the guards were hiring cars from Easy Rent and companies like this here. Complete fabrication. So that's one of the points, as well as looking after your health, that you actually need to only take information from established sources and to look after one another as well.
Yeah, look after. I was going to say that the GAA has a real responsibility, not a responsibility, but they seem to be already stepping up their efforts to help the local communities, providing information for help older people. Isn't that, the GAA have a great role here to play?
No, absolutely. Like, maybe the GAA had sort of moved away from its true purpose in the last couple of years. There's been a sort of move toward commercialism, and maybe this here is sort of a little moment in time to sort of get back to what the GAA is supposed to be there for, and it's supposed to be there for the community, and it's a focal point, and sort of that sense of community now is going to be absolutely so important, especially in these next couple of months, just in terms of providing information, sort of providing facilities if that's needed, and just, I suppose, making sure that everyone is kind of looking out for each other, especially the more vulnerable members in clubs and that kind of thing. And also, we as members and younger people have a responsibility to the other people in our clubs to follow the instructions that are being given by the experts.
Is there a concern though, if as expected there's going to be an economic crash, the markets are going down as we speak, how that's going to affect the clubs long term? Obviously the lottos can still get collected, but there's likely to be an effect.
Yeah, 100%. I think that is going to be a massive impact, and this is a knock-on, which we've spoken about the health, which is primary number one, but this is going to be a knock-on impact. Thinking of a number of clubs in Armagh that are involved in fundraising and development of the pitches that are looking towards the future generations as well, and trying to achieve their goals. A lot of that comes down to financial, and we talk about the 30 million that was gone into county teams last season, but the amount of money that it takes to run a club, and my own club being a dual club, and Camogie and ladies football as well, there's a lot of resources go into that there. And when you're, say, developing a pitch, there's borrowings that go into that as well, and that's why you run the events and you run the lotto, and a lot of it can be done online now, but you still have a lot of the money comes in from ticket sellers. Now that has to be knocked on the head, but where you are running like big draws and ticket sellers go from different clubs, and we've seen it for years throughout the GAA, and it's the generosity of the GAA community that has enabled clubs to develop in the way they can. But certainly now, when that's all knocked on the head, and it will be knocked on the head, clubs are going to run into financial difficulty, and that's where the talk of the banks and going into overdrafts and needed to be helped out, because no one wants to see a GAA club as a result of this go off a cliff, and that's what we're facing.
So hopefully what we see is, in the short term, the GAA rallying around the local community and the older people, and then in the long term, the community rallying around the GAA club, if it does have any negative effects economically.
Yeah, well, absolutely, because when we look back on our society, the GAA is a focal point. When I grew up, the GAA club was all I was interested in, going down the road with my brothers and sisters, and we were there every night of the week, rain, hail or shine, and I think it is a focal point that people will go towards what in times of crisis, and we are in a time of crisis, and certainly however long this takes, we will rally around the older generation, the more vulnerable in our community. We've seen it already, St Pat's, Cullyhanna, Dunloy, the messages that have gone up. If anyone is in difficulty or needs something lifted, even just to check in, maybe not go into the house, but check in and lift the phone to some of your members that are more vulnerable. And that is the essence of what being a GAA member is, and that's why we're so proud of our association. It's in the fabric, it's in our DNA, and I think, as Tomas says, this is a moment where we reevaluate and get back to what is important about being a member of the GAA, and that is community, and that is looking out for one another, and that is the greater good.
Yeah. Just before we go, I wanted to ask you about what scenarios you think are going to happen. You know, if, as you say, 12 weeks is what Boris Johnson says, that would take us up to June. We see in the league then disappear, Tomas, forget null and void this year?
Yeah, I think so. If I was head of the fixtures, I'd probably, if it doesn't come back till June, if we're waiting till June, the league's null and void. Play the championship straight knockout, and you can have it finished then in maybe end of July, and then let club players play. So when a bit of normality comes back, it's important that it's not just county players that get to play football. If we have to wait until June, then I think it's probably more important that everyone gets to play. So there is maybe an argument for maybe not playing the inter-county championship and just letting the clubs play, seeing as the club players will be waiting from now until June to play. But the National League, I think, is null and void, and if the county season does start up again, I think the Tier 2 thing will be pushed back until 2021.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Like, because the thought you're thinking of the most people who can be affected, and the most people are the club players who really need to play. And wouldn't it be a great lift if the club was given a good run right from the very start? Because if we presume, as it's going to pan out, if we can see what's happening in other countries, we're going to need a lift after what's going to happen.
Yeah, certainly, and I think the GAA is something we go to in times of crisis, and it is something that we look forward to as well. It's our release for a lot of players. Just on the fixture point, and again, every cloud and all that, and I think there is an opportunity that if we are to come back in June, that we say, right, let's re-look at this for a one-off to see can we do, and I've spoken about maybe a festival of football, like a Sigerson type situation where you have a number of games run off over a period of weeks, then you have quarterfinals, semi-finals, and then you have on a maybe Thursday, Friday, and then the game on the final on the Sunday, and run it nearly like a blitz tournament, and get it done and dusted, and then we move into the club and give the club its proper due. And the one good thing, which I thought was madness to change the way the club finals when they were played, is that that's actually taking place, because we'll be looking into a Corfin Kilcoo final tomorrow, which probably wouldn't be taking place. So that's one of the I suppose small lights in all of this here, but it'll be fascinating to see how things turn out. But I think there's bigger and more important things than the GAA at play at the minute.
Well, that's quite the headline. The coronavirus is going to save the GAA fixtures sketch. I think that's how we end this show.
Well, you never know.
Cahal, thanks for your time. Appreciate you coming in. And Tomas, appreciate it again. Thanks for your time as well. I really enjoyed the chat this week, and I look forward to if you're back on again in the future.
Good stuff. Thanks a lot, Ronan. Thanks.